Hello, everyone, and welcome to Back Chat. Welcome to Yoga Berry, your yoga for scoliosis community. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Christine Jareggi-Berry, and I'm a yoga teacher, and I specialize in yoga for scoliosis. And we are here live, I'm hoping. I was trying to go live as well in the Facebook group, but obviously that didn't work. So I'm going to try that again, see if that's happening. Okay, there we are. Okay, so now it's all working. A little bit of experimenting today. So some of you know, some of you regular listeners know, obviously, that I'm doing this every Wednesday afternoon, 4 p.m. UK time. Now, I heard that apparently in the US, you change your clocks at a different time than we do here in the UK, which makes it really confusing. So I apologize if you are like an hour late or an hour early, because we haven't gone into British summertime yet, but we will in a couple of weeks' time. Anyway, so those of you who know that we're doing this regularly, you know this is happening live on YouTube. It's happening live on Instagram. Sorry, not live on Instagram. It's being posted on my podcast afterwards, once it's done. And I was also trying to put this on Facebook, but apparently that's not working today. Never mind. So anyway, if you are here on YouTube, then come and say hello. I'm having kind of sort of an open Q&A, but I will talk about how to get started with yoga when you have a scoliosis, and maybe some things that you might want to consider. Because I know that there are a lot of people, and I do get a lot of messages from people who say, I love what you do. I love all your videos, and I watch all your yoga videos. I should really do some yoga. Right. Yes, you should, because let me tell you this, it only works if you actually practice, right? Yoga does not work if you don't actually do it. So just watching the videos is not helpful. Just listening to me talk is not helpful either. Yes, it's giving you the information maybe that you need, but you really need to get yourself onto the mat and actually practice the yoga. And that's really how you're going to create the change that you want. And some people just kind of associate increasing flexibility with yoga, but that's not the only thing. Obviously, we can do a lot about creating more strength, creating more stability. We can breathe better. We can feel better in our bodies. And those of you maybe who are practicing already, you know this, but still there might be some things where you're not quite sure in relation to scoliosis. So that's what I'm here to talk about today. If you are here live, come and say hello. Tell me where you're from. Tell me if you are practicing yoga already, and or if you're kind of new to it, and tell me what's holding you back, because I'm finding this very interesting at the moment. Again, it's just sharing that, you know, I get a lot of messages from people say who love this idea, but they don't actually practice. And what is it that is maybe holding you back? Is it fear? Is it fear of getting yourself hurt? Is it fear of making your scoliosis worse? Is it the fear of maybe not doing it right? Is it the fear of not fitting in? And maybe it's all of them, right? So just let me know what it is for you, and we'll see if we can talk about it, obviously, and if we can maybe do something to calm you down and tell you that it's okay. You can get started with yoga, but there might be some things that you might want to consider. So the first thing is that I want to bring up, and that's for me personally, because obviously I specialize in this topic, is the difference between yoga for scoliosis and yoga with scoliosis. So for me, there is a fundamental difference there. A yoga for scoliosis class, and I teach both, by the way. I teach yoga for scoliosis, meaning I'm tailoring my yoga offerings to those that have scoliosis, and I teach general yoga classes where people that have scoliosis are welcome, and where they are welcome to explore, and where they can feel safe. But this is a little bit of a difference for me. So I'm talking today more about how can you practice yoga safely when you are going to a general yoga class, and what can you do to kind of to feel safe, and what are maybe some of the things that you might want to consider. So first thing, of course, whenever there is something in your body that doesn't feel quite right, that you're worried about, it's important, and if it's just for your own peace of mind, to have a conversation with your doctor. And you know, you will find this on every health disclaimer before every single yoga class. It will say check in with your doctor, but it is important. And just for you as well to kind of feel confident. And if your doctor says, oh, there is something you might need to kind of consider, maybe you've had a hip replacement, or you've got something going on in your knee or your shoulder, and then make sure to get some advice before. Now, my general, my experience with scoliosis is that most health practitioners will say, no problem, go off and do yoga. There's nothing to consider. You'll be fine. Just do the movement. So, and that's great, right? Because we do want health practitioners to recommend yoga, which some of them are sometimes a little bit more hesitant because they're not fully understanding what it's all about, maybe. But obviously, sometimes this can also be not quite the reassurance that you might want. You might think, well, maybe they just don't know, right? Maybe they don't know if what is going on in the class. And of course they say, yeah, it's fine, but maybe they don't really care, right? So it is important to get all the information for you to make sure that you can feel really safe and supported. So have this initial conversation with your doctor. And then my second advice would be to establish if you might be better off working with someone one-to-one, or if you are fine to go to a general group class. And how you can establish this is if you have something very specific, and I'm not meaning scoliosis, yes, that's specific as well, but if there is acute pain, if you had an injury, if there is some sort of limitation, also if you've had spinal fusion, that would also fall into this category for me. You might want to work with someone one-to-one, even if it's just for one session, to get all your kind of general advice. And I know that this is not accessible for everyone, and you know, one-to-one sessions are generally more expensive, of course, than group sessions with a yoga teacher. But it is important, and it might just be worth, in one session you could cover so much ground with a yoga teacher and just really get all the advice for you, for your body. And then if you are generally quite confident to practice on your own, then you can join a group class. You know, this is just generally, I don't know you, of course, so I don't know what your specific case is, but some people are very happy to explore and do different exercises, and they're generally quite fit, and they love experimenting. So for you, it might not be necessary at all. You might just go straight into it. So this is kind of an individual choice. Okay, I can see Liz is here. Hi, Liz. Good morning. Hope you're well. Liz, let me know if you are practicing yoga already. I know that you're a regular on the show here. And I've said this before. I know that there are still some people out there who are kind of watching this and who are listening to this, but who are still a little bit hesitant about actually starting a practice, and who might still be thinking, you know, I'm not quite sure. I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to make my scoliosis worse. I'm waiting. So this talk here today is really there to give you the confidence to know you can do this, right? It's just about thinking about some of these things. which I'm going to go through. So first was talk to your doctor. Second was decide if you want to do a one-to-one or a group session. And then the third thing would be to think about the style of yoga that you might want to practice. And this obviously has got a lot to do with the teacher. And yoga is such a wide field in a way. There's so many different opinions, there's so many different approaches, there's so many different lineages, there's so many different yoga teachers that sometimes it can be a little bit of a jungle, and you might have to try out a few different things before you find the type of yoga that is right for you. I'm going to give you my opinion today for what feels good for me and what I think is a sensible approach for scoliosis to get started with. But please don't take this as, the ultimate rules or whatever. There are, and I'm sure there are many, many styles of yoga that I haven't experienced and that I can't really comment on. So again, if you are here and you are in the chat and you do practice yoga, tell me what style of yoga it is. So just to kind of get a general sense. So there are kind of a few mainstream ones. I would say one of them is Vinyasa yoga, it's called, or it's type of dynamic yoga. Ashtanga yoga would be kind of the more traditional style of yoga, similar as well, but Ashtanga yoga is very it's very precise, and it's very precise in terms of the order that you do the poses in and that you're always following the same sequence. So I see this as kind of the more dynamic, one of the more dynamic styles. And then you've got kind of the more, a little bit more of the static poses. And I talked to the wonderful Elise Browning-Miller last week. She is an Iyengar yoga teacher. So Iyengar style of yoga is another style of yoga which is very much focused on precision in terms of alignment, in terms of doing the poses in a very particular way, and then holding the poses a little bit longer. And then there are lots of different kind of falling in the middle. So you've got the one end with the moving quite fast from one piece to another, one pose to another, and then you've got the little bit more static poses. Now, Hege is saying she practices yoga somatics, and I just talked via email to James Knight from Gentle Somatic Yoga. So I'm hoping to get him onto the podcast, which is going to be amazing. So you might be interested in that, Hege, because I'm also interested in the somatics. And this is kind of a more for newer blend fusion, I would say, of different approaches that come into the yoga practice. Yin yoga is kind of a fusion of the Chinese traditions and the Indian tradition. So Indian, the yoga, and then the Chinese, more of the acupuncture sort of system, bringing that together. That's the yin yoga, which again is another style of yoga where you hold poses a little bit longer, but in a more passive way. And I can talk about this a little bit more. I don't feel that this is a good style of yoga for beginners. So I know Hege has been practicing yoga for a while, so I'm sure you're okay. But it's generally not something that I would suggest for beginners, because you have to be really body aware in order to not hurt yourself in those types of yoga. Restorative yoga. I'm just going through Hege's list right now because she's given me, and I'm going to bring it up on the screen here for a moment for those of you who are watching. So she's saying yoga somatics, yin, restorative, and very gentle hatha yoga. So restorative yoga is, and those of you who have been watching my YouTube videos, I do bring in a lot of restorative yoga because I personally love it. That's why we use a lot of props, blankets, blocks, bolsters, things like that to be completely supported in the yoga positions. And then again, it's a style of yoga where we stay in the poses longer. And in restorative yoga, we actually stay even longer than in yin yoga. However, the difference being that restorative yoga is more restorative, as the name would suggest. So restorative yoga is a little bit more on the comfortable side, and it's a little bit more about the meditative benefits. It's about releasing, about softening, it's about opening, whereas yin is a little bit more about stretching. So it's stronger, which again is why I'm not suggesting it for beginners. So for beginners, I would usually suggest to start with Hatha yoga or to start with Iyengar yoga, because both of them are quite slow, and they are moving slowly, or not, they're transitioning very slowly from one pose to the next. In Iyengar yoga, they are very separate, the poses actually, and you stay in them a little bit longer, which means from a scoliosis perspective, you have more time to adjust, and you have more time to think about what is actually happening now when I'm in this shape. What is happening with my asymmetry, with my spine, which isn't completely straight. Again, saying that nobody really has a completely straight spine, but you know what I mean, with a little bit more asymmetry and less balance. What does that mean for you in this specific yoga pose? So this is why I prefer, I know this is long-winded, but hopefully for those of you who are maybe not so familiar with the different styles of yoga, hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of how to pick and choose, and how to find the style of yoga that might work for you. And I'm not saying that faster styles are not good. I'm not saying that at all. I think they can be very beneficial, especially if you at the moment feel like you need a little bit kind of more of a dynamic practice. And this might be from the mind. If you've got a very busy mind, sometimes it's hard. It's sometimes really difficult to slow down, and you might need to be in a faster yoga class until your mind starts to become a little bit more settled, and when you might enjoy a little bit more of a calmer yoga class a little bit more. Good. So Shalina is saying, hi, Christine. Hello, Shalina. I do your YouTube practices in yoga and find them very calming, especially at the end of the day. Thank you, Shalina. Yes, so my style of yoga is definitely a little bit, it's evolved over the years, of course. I've been practicing yoga for a long time. I gravitate more towards the slower, the more somatic, meaning being in the body, really meaning feeling what's happening in the poses. The breathing practice is very important to me, and the relaxation element is also very important to me. So this is how I teach yoga, and a lot of people love this. A lot of people find this very beneficial, but I realize as well, it might not be for everyone. So some people might prefer a little bit more of a faster class, and doing more the hot yoga or vinyasa yoga style. So again, a lot of it is about finding your teacher and finding also the person that you connect with. Good. Lovely. Ivana is asking, can yoga help to realign the spine? Let me know, Ivana, if you are new here to this channel, and let me know what you know about your scoliosis. So generally, what I would say to that is it depends on a lot of different factors. What is your background? how old are you? How severe is the scoliosis? What is the cause of the scoliosis? And I'm saying this here, even though most of the time it's an idiopathic scoliosis, meaning nobody knows where it's coming from. But it might be that you have a functional scoliosis and it's just your muscles that are imbalanced, in which case you have a very, very good chance of finding complete symmetry again and being completely realigned. Now, if it's concerned about the spine, if there is a structural scoliosis, then that's a little bit more difficult, of course. Good. So Liz is saying, hello, Christine. I was doing modified Pilates until COVID. I dabble in yoga now, but don't have bolsters, etc., which stops me doing some poses. I try to concentrate on my awareness. I'm fused. Lovely. Thanks for letting us know. Yes, so good point. So spinal fusion, and I said this, I touched on this in the beginning, is one of those times when I would suggest to work with someone one-on-one, even if it's just for one session, to get kind of a general, and you know, we as yoga teachers, we need to be able to look at you to know obviously what exactly is going on, and not every fusion is the same. I do have some videos, as you know, on my YouTube channel, and I kind of, when I put these videos out, I imagine a person with a complete fusion, meaning from the top of the neck down towards the base of the spine. That might not be you, right? So you might have a different type of fusion, but that's kind of just to be on the safe side. This is what I would imagine. But again, it doesn't, I don't know how you move. I don't know if there is anything else going on in the body, of course. So it's always just suggestions, what you're finding on there. So you're saying you're concentrating on awareness. Absolutely. I love that. And that is one of the next points, which I'm going to go into. But I did want to address the point about a bolster. And saying that it's stopping you from doing some poses. Now, I do not want anyone to be held back by the lack of yoga equipment, which is why generally I try to keep my yoga quite simple. Yes, I love bolsters and I love the props, but I don't overuse them. I feel that it's very important that people have the option to practice without all the fancy equipment, because it can get expensive, right? Now, in terms of a yoga bolster, it depends on what you're doing, but you could very well roll up a bath towel, a big bath towel. That could be a yoga bolster. What works really well as well is just rolling up your yoga mat and then wrapping a blanket around that. That could be your yoga bolster. So be creative, right? There's lots of cushions I use, I use anything that I've got in the house. I don't I don't think you have to have that very specific yoga equipment, even though it helps, of course. And I usually say, if you're investing in one thing, let it be a yoga bolster, but you can make it work without all that stuff, really. Good. Lovely. Ivana, I'm going to come back to you in a moment. Let me just go through some of the other things that I wanted to mention. When you think about, so what we're talking about is you want to practice yoga. You've decided now if you're going to do a one-to-one or if you're going to do a group class, you've decided on your style of yoga maybe. And then you actually go to the yoga class, right? And then what? Is there something that you shouldn't do with scoliosis? Is there something that you should avoid completely? So my take on this is, the first thing that you need to learn in a yoga class and that you need to consider is yourself and your body. And this is very important. And some people kind of skip over this part and they do everything that the teacher shows them. and tells them to do. Now, I very much believe in, when you go to yoga class, it's your responsibility to look after yourself. Yes, the teacher's there to keep you safe, but they don't know you as well as you know yourself, of course. So and they don't know how you feel, right? So I would always encourage you to, when something doesn't feel right, and again, it might sound very simple, but you wouldn't believe how many people kind of override this gut feeling. And children are not like this. Children would say, no, I'm not doing this, it hurts. But grown-ups, for some reason, seem to override this very quickly and do it because the teacher does it, right? And the teacher has a very different body, usually. Everyone is different, and everyone can do different things, and everyone has got different limitations. So if there is anything that in any way doesn't feel good for you, if you have any doubt, leave it out or do a lesser version of it. Meaning, you do not have to go into the complete shape that somebody else next to you does. Do not compare yourself. Really listen to what's going on inside of you. And if your teacher is, again, I've been to yoga classes where the teacher would push, right? And they would, not physically, especially in COVID times, not, but maybe with their voice and say, come on, hold it longer or whatever. No, you do not, right? If you have a yoga teacher like that, you run, you get out of the class. You do not want to be in that class where anyone pushes you to do something that you don't want or that your body doesn't want. Maybe you want it, but your body doesn't want it. So I feel very, very strongly about this, that there is a personal responsibility involved in this, and your body will tell you. It's just a matter of listening. Generally, there are some things that I prefer not to do too much with scoliosis. And if we think about the spine here, which I've got in the background, like a little kind of shape. For those of you who are listening on the podcast, you don't see this, obviously, but I just made a little sketch of a scoliosis, which is two-dimensional because it's on this little whiteboard there, but it's a sideward curvature. But what you cannot see in this little sketch is that there is also a rotation going on, right? So anything that is convex is also rotated to the back, rotated backwards. So if you're looking at someone from the back and they have a right thoracic curvature, for example, that means their curve is going to the right, and the rib cage, the right rib cage, is rotated backwards, meaning the ribs are coming out towards you. Why is this important? It's important in any poses where you are bending the spine, which is pretty much in most yoga poses, right? So it means that if you bend to the right, this has a different effect on your spine than when you bend to the left. If you bend forwards, it has a different effect on the right side of your spine and the left side of your spine. Same with bending backwards. If you go into a twist, going one way has a different effect on the spine than going the other way. So all those poses, and in yoga for scoliosis, what we do is obviously we start to really target and think about and really tailoring the yoga poses to your individual curvature. However, if you are in a general yoga class, that is difficult. So what I would suggest is that you're just holding yourself back a little bit in these poses until you know better, until you practice with awareness. So if you do a twist, you do not have to go into the biggest ever twist just because you can. If you do a forward bend, can you do it with a lengthened spine rather than rounding in the body? So whatever you're doing, really, you want to think about elongation, because that's what's important for scoliosis. That's the most important thing, elongation. So can you maintain this elongation when you do all your different yoga poses? So that's what I would say to that. I'm not a fan of all the extreme yoga poses, but I think that's just common sense because that's probably going to hurt. But anything that is kind of a very unnatural shape for the body, I'm not a huge fan of it for scoliosis. I'm talking about big back bends and big twists. I'm not a fan of shoulder stand for scoliosis because it does put a lot of pressure onto the upper spine and the neck. If there is a rotation, if there's an imbalance, that might not be such a good idea. Headstand is another one that you might want to be careful with. It doesn't mean that you cannot do it, but as a beginner, that might be not one of the poses, one of the first poses anyway, that you are going to practice. Good. So let me know if you have any questions about this. Reem saying, hi, Yoga Berry. Hello. Let me know if that makes sense. If you've got any question, maybe there is a yoga pose that you want to discuss, and I'm happy to do that while I'm going through my comments here in the chat live on YouTube. Okay, so Ivana is saying I had to visit group physiotherapy sessions, but I was really lazy in my teens. Now, which teen is not lazy, right? I think we were all lazy. I was definitely lazy when I was in my teens. I did not want to do the exercise. Now being 22, I would like to get my spine straight as much as I can. Of course, I don't want to have an operation. Good. So there's a few things here. I'm loving that you are being proactive, and I'm loving that you're looking into, that's why you're here, right? You are looking into different ways of what you can do to work with your body, and you are 22, so you've got a very good chance to do something and to make sure that it doesn't get worse. So with yoga, it's a holistic type of approach towards scoliosis, meaning that it's not just the physical exercises, but we are thinking about your mindset. We're thinking about how you feel emotionally, how you're feeling mentally, which is going to help you overall, obviously, in life. I'm saying obviously, but I'm a little bit older than you are. So to me, it is obvious right now, but it might not have been when I was in my 20s, and I can really understand your desire to have a straight spine. But just to bear in mind that just because people have a straight spine doesn't make them any happier, richer, more successful. It doesn't make them pain-free. It doesn't mean that they can move better. So if you've been listening to me in this podcast, in this back chat, you know that I think that straight spines are overrated. Ivana, I would much rather that you feel great in your body, that you feel strong, that you can move well, that you can do all the things that you want to do, and that you feel balanced now when you're 22, when you're 32, when you're 42, when you're 52, when you're 92. That is my wish for you. And I think that's a much better goal to have than trying to have a straight spine, and a little bit more of a realistic one as well. Good. So let me see. I'm just reading through some of these other comments here. Ikram is saying, my left rib cage is not opening. I try hard. The left side becomes very high. How the right side and left shoulder are also getting very weak. The clothes do not look good. Yes, and let me know if there's anyone here who can empathize with this, right? Yes, sometimes the clothes, and I have more of a lumbar curvature, so for me, I was always conscious in how I look in a in a swimming costume rather than like tops not fitting. But if you have more of a thoracic curvature, it might well be that one of your shoulders are quite a lot higher, or there's more of a rib hump and the shoulders don't, the clothes don't fit properly. Bra is another one. So those of us who are wearing a bra, they might not fit properly or not the same on one side to the other. So this is just a very, very, very common thing. And again, this is what in the yoga practice, what we work with is balancing out some of these things where maybe the muscles are a lot tighter on one side than the other, and creating a little bit more space and creating a little bit more evenness overall. Good. So Krishna is saying, hola, hola. 26 years old, have an S curve. I practice yoga daily. I hold certain poses and avoid some. I use breath work a lot. I use a range of techniques and tools. Fantastic. And that's really all we can ask for, is that you explore, that you experiment, that you find what works for you. And I'm a big supporter and proponent of all the breathing work and the pranayama and all of that, because I think that's one of the most important things for scoliosis, especially if you've got thoracic scoliosis and there is a distortion in the rib cage, and the ribs are compressing on one side, opening on the other. Again, let me know if you can relate to this. Maybe it feels like you can breathe a lot into one side, but in the other side, there's just not much happening. So I think this is very, very important, and I'm glad that you're focusing on this. Good. And then Krishna is saying, I love the interviews on this channel, full spectrum. Yes, I do try to keep, I do try to have a variety, and we've had some really good chats lately, and some interviews as well with interview guests. I do like this format where we've got a little bit more time and I can go through all your questions, but I also really love chatting to other people who know more than me in different, in different fields, obviously. And I'm talking to someone at the moment who knows a lot about osteoporosis, so that's going to come up soon. Good. So I have a radiology report showing an improvement in my curvature, but have recently lost discipline and practice, relatively pain-free, 47 lumbar and 38 thoracic. So that is quite an typical, or quite an even S-curve in terms of that the degrees are similar to the top and the bottom. And I have found over the years of practicing myself and teaching people that have scoliosis and working quite intensely with people that have scoliosis, one-on-one and in groups, I have found that there is not a direct correlation between the degree of the curvature and the amount of pain that you have. So meaning that you can have a huge curve and no pain, and you can have a small curvature and a big amount of pain. So there is not a direct correlation from what I have experienced, certainly. And you can, and I'm glad to hear that you've gone obviously through life very relatively pain-free, as you're saying. And sometimes, yes, I know what it's like. Sometimes you just have to kind of, we go through phases, right? There might be a lot of motivation and then we kind of drop off and it's difficult to start again. But it's really important that we keep going, right? If there is a little bit of a setback and you have to stop for whatever reason, know that you can always start again. It's not lost time. It's something else was going on. So don't give yourself a hard time if you've kind of dropped off your practice, and if you're not doing something. And when I had my children, I didn't do very much for a while because I just didn't have time to do anything. But then once they were a little bit older, I could dedicate a lot more time to my practice again. Good. So Liz is saying, if I try on clothes fasting, look at how they lie on my rib hump. Yes. So this is especially, as I said, with thoracic curvatures, the clothes can sometimes be an issue. And there are some clothing companies I saw on Instagram. I think they're called Breakage London. They specialize in clothes for people with scoliosis. So that could be interesting. I've heard as well for a tip from Caroline Friedman. And she was saying that it might be a good idea with scoliosis to wear something asymmetric. Because obviously if you wear something that has got symmetry, it's very obvious, right? When one shoulder looks different. But if you wear something asymmetric, maybe just over one shoulder, or maybe it's the pattern, then that's not quite so obvious. Good. So Reem's saying my right side is like a letter C. Yes, we call this a C curve, or usually a thoracolumbar curvature. But I didn't go to the doctor yet because there's a lot of people, right? Yes, and it's not always easy to, even here in the UK, it's not always easy, especially at the moment, to get yourself an appointment and get someone to take you seriously as well, unfortunately, I have to say, with scoliosis, because don't be disheartened if this happens to you, that they might do an x-ray, they might look at your spine, and then they'll say, well, there's nothing we can do for you. This is very, very common, just because, well, from their kind of perspective, there isn't anything they can do because they don't deal with exercise. For them, it's just a matter of, are you going to have surgery or not? And if you're not going to have surgery, then there's nothing else they can do for you. Right. Good. So sorry, I'm just reading through the comments for a moment. So Reem's saying, you made my spine even better. No, I didn't make your spine better. You made your spine better, right? It's nothing to do with me. I'm giving you advice. I'm giving you suggestions. I'm hopefully inspiring you to start a practice, but really it's down to you. So if you've made a change, you can be really proud of yourself and you've created that change. Good. Liz is saying, I've recently been told I have asthma. I feel it's more to do with my scoliosis, but I'm not sure what I can do to improve my breathing. I have thoracic curve. Yes, it could definitely have something. Yeah, thoracic curvature means that that's in the upper part of your spine. The rib cage is where your lungs are sitting in. So of course, if there is a curvature there, it will have an effect on your lungs. So there might well be a connection there. And if there is, on top of that, if there's a lot of tightness going on in the thoracic spine or in the muscles around the thoracic spine, then it might be a good idea to work on releasing that and create a little bit more space for the breath. Good. Krishna is saying, experimenting with moving and breathing, you can find your center as the lungs will expand more and easier. Yes, absolutely. And again, you might have to work asymmetrically on this. You might have to give one side more attention than the other. Good. Hege is giving me another tip for another back chat. Hypopressive exercises. Oh, what's that? Hypopressive exercises. I'm not quite sure what that is. And scoliosis. I'm going to have to look this up. Thank you for your support. Have you heard of functional patterns? It's tensegrity movement training. So we've had Meredith Stevens a few weeks ago who talked about tensegrity and the anatomy trains approach. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but yes, so we are fans over here of this approach. Any other techniques for older people? I think yoga is a great technique for older people. And I've talked to, so I did a one-to-one session with someone a couple of days ago, and she was in her mid 70s, and she had lots of things going on. She had knee problems, she had hip problems as well, and we had to really find some things that she can do at the moment because of those things going on. But really, it doesn't matter where somebody starts, right? There's always things that you can do, and you can always adapt things. And just because you're older doesn't mean that you can do less. So, you know, some of my students, kind of the older they get, the more things they can do. So you would be surprised. And then I've got people who are in their 30s who are in terrible states and they cannot do anything. So just because you're older, in my opinion, doesn't mean that you need to adapt things. But there might obviously be things that are not accessible right now. If you've got arthritis, for example, you know, you might not want to be in hands and knees. If you've got osteoporosis, and again, we're going to talk about this in a few weeks' time a little bit more. If you've got osteoporosis, there might be other things that you have to consider. So again, old age is not enough for me. You're going to have to give me a little bit more of what you're looking for. Good. So Shalina's asking, I'm going to take another few minutes here to answer those last questions, if I can, as they're coming in quickly. I have left thoracic right lumbar curve. Which leg do I pull up in a tree pose? That depends, Shalina. And so in the tree pose, what is mainly affected is your lumbar curve. So you want to really think about what's happening with your lumbar curvature when you, for example, lift your left leg up, right? You're going to shorten the left side of your lumbar spine if you're not kind of careful with what your hips exactly are doing. So that's what you want to think about. Can you create a little bit more space? In your case, if you have a right lumbar curve, you want to create space on the left side of your waist. But there might also be a difference on how your weight distribution is. And this often depends on which curve is bigger. Is your thoracic curve bigger? Is your lumbar curve bigger? Where do you generally have more weight? And then tree pose can be really useful to balance this out, and maybe practice on the leg a little bit more. That is a little bit weaker. Okay, once an orthopedic told me that if I find a guru that heals my back to let him know. So I became my own guru. Fantastic. Excellent. Lovely. Liz is saying, I agree with your style and slow, deep breathing. I ordered Lisa's book and DVD. Wish you had those. Yes, they are amazing. So do get Elise Browning-Miller's. That's who Liz is talking about. She was on the podcast last week. And I have trained with her. I really love her approach. And it's her book is a really, really good resource. Yes, and then in terms of me, maybe I will write a book one day. Let's see. Let's see. Right. Okay. So Reema's saying, I actually went to the doctor and did some x-ray, and I don't know what is next. Okay, well, that's a good first step. You know, you need to get a proper diagnosis and then come back, have a look at all the YouTube videos that I've got here on my channel. You will find a video about how to kind of establish what your curve pattern is, even though your diagnosis should have told you this. And then you can start to explore maybe adapting your yoga poses a little bit more. Michelle is saying, I've seen some videos on myofascial unwinding. what do you think of it? Well, you have to send me the link of the videos and then I will have a look. I'm very curious and I'm always interested in different approaches. Okay, Bahrain is saying, how many times can make the curve back to normal? Right, what is normal anyway? So I think your question is how long does it take to create a change, or how often should you practice yoga? And let me know if that's what you mean, what your question is. Generally, I always say little and often is better than a lot once every couple of weeks, right? And 15 minutes when we, in the practice transformation, which is my 4 weeks online course, I tell people to practice 15 minutes every single day. And that creates a change, right? If you practice 1.5 hours every 2 weeks, you're probably not going to make a lasting change. But all of this is very individual. It depends on what else you're doing in your life. It depends on how fit and you know, how receptive you are to movement practices you are generally. Some people create a change very quickly, and for some people it takes a little bit longer. Good. Liz is saying my limitations are compounding, so I have to keep adapting. Thank you, Christina. You're welcome. Yes, and you know, yoga is an individual practice at the end of the day. Yoga is about self-exploration, self-study. Yoga is about you. It's not about the teacher. So make it about you, right? You don't serve your yoga practice. You don't serve your teacher. The yoga practice should serve you. So the yoga should be adapted to you, of course, to nobody else. So whatever that means to you. And sometimes people say, oh, I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do yoga because I am not this enough. I'm not young enough. I'm not flexible enough. That's rubbish. I'm sorry. But it's just about how you are going to practice. And maybe your teacher hasn't given you the right things, right? Maybe you haven't found the right things yet. But as long as you can breathe, you can practice yoga. And Reem is saying, thank you so much for responding to me and giving me some advice. You're welcome. So this is really what these sessions are about as well. You know, this is why I've decided to make this a live thing. I love those interactions with you because then I know what's important to you, the questions that you have. I can make the content more relevant and I can find interview guests for all of us to learn together and make it really relevant to everyone. So thank you so much, everyone, for all your questions today. It's been really fun. And as I said, this is happening 4 p.m. every Wednesday. If you can't make it live, you can catch up on the replay, either on YouTube or you can find it on iTunes and Spotify as well. And yes, have a lovely rest of the day. And as always, make sure to join the Facebook group if you haven't done so, and connect with me on Instagram as well. I love to read all your messages as well. All right. Thank you and speak to you soon. Bye.